either, because when we're in a highly stressful state, we're trying to escape it. And there's no judgment on that. We don't want to feel bad anymore. So we're doing what it takes to get out of that. I'm just throwing out different options you have, so you don't have to do it this way. For example, alcohol or drug abuse, overeating, risk-taking or recklessness, directing anger at people, becoming passive or aggressive or passive-aggressive, escape behaviors, including becoming suicidal. Suicide a lot of times is just wanting to escape the pain. You know, it's not a bad person, not a weak person, anything. It's just too much and I can't take it. So it's really important that we support each other and help each other through these things. Working so much that you get sick, trying to control, forgetting your priorities, arguing with your family. I know a lot of these things we do because we are stressed out. So I'll just quickly go over this because it's similar to the gratitude exercise. I was working with a client who felt like such a failure. He was anything but a failure. I can't tell you anything about who he is because I don't want to give anything away, but a very highly skilled professional person constantly felt like a failure. And so I had to remind him, well, tell me some of the things you were successful at. Because literally when you're in such a lowered state, you forget. For me, I'll quickly tell you so that you can think of your own examples. As interns, and I'm not sure if it's the same in all fields, but as an intern in psychology about 15 years ago, maybe more now, we were thrown the hardest cases. So no matter what happens now, what happens today, what happened last week, I know that 15 years ago, there was this kid. I worked in a group home for emotionally disturbed boys, and they were all there for being either abusive or abused. This kid had an arm in a cast and a leg in a cast. It was his first day, and it was my first day out of graduate school. And we sat and played a game for a while. I won't go into too many details, but I will say that after about a year of therapy, this kid got to go home, and he's probably about 30 years old right now. But I will never forget that. Even if I stink today, that kid's all right because I did a good job way back then. I'm good. You know, as in some of the acting classes I've had, we'll say, and scene, cut, we're good. We finished that one. What are those stories for you, though, where you're like, you know what? If I do nothing else right in this life, I did that. Think about that, please. Okay. So earlier on I mentioned that your thoughts are really important. And your thoughts can be your helpers or your own worst enemy. Is there a little demon in your head that's dragging you down? You've got a villain in your story. There's this quote here, you can't solve a problem with a villain, you can only do that with a human being. That I got from a management book, but it seems to really apply in marriage therapy. There's always one person that says, he's the problem, she's the problem. But everybody's got their pluses and their minuses, their good sides and their bad sides, their strengths and their weaknesses. And that's the same for you as well. So think of what kind of standards you're holding for yourself. Are you, all black and white thinking? That can get pretty unhealthy. How you talk to yourself, whether you consider yourself a villain in your own story or not, really does matter. Also, we all need some good friends. Someone who will see you at your worst and who will be there for you. At your worst there. And someone, maybe not who you should be able to go to, but who you really can go to. There is a difference. One more video. Thank you. Actually, one more video after this, too. Yes.
When you're going through a tough time, one of the best things you can do is to open up and talk about what's going on. But why is talking so effective?
Talking makes me feel less alone. It makes me feel like I'm not the only one overthinking everything.
It's not like I want someone to solve my problems for me. I just needed someone to listen, and I felt so much better after just letting it out.
Finding someone to talk to was a huge part in getting through a really tough time and I wish I'd done it a lot sooner than I did.
Talking can provide stress relief and can lighten the load of a particular concern that someone might be having.
When someone opens up and talks about what's happening for them, they can sort of start to break down a problem into smaller parts, which can help to reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed.
If you're going through a rough time, finding someone that you trust to talk to is really important. Sometimes choosing someone outside of the situation can really help to alter your perspective and shed new light on an issue that's been troubling.
Visit reachout.com to find out more about dealing with tough times.
So I often get the question or the statement, talking's not going to solve anything. So I really had to find a video on it where talking will help, actually. There are many, many reasons why it does, but briefly, it is really powerful to feel like you're not alone, that you're not the only person that has felt this way. And almost everyone comes into me thinking that they're crazy, there's something wrong with them, and I'm like, I mean, the good news and the bad news, I've heard 100 of what you're telling me right now, so you're really not alone. Oops, sorry. Next one. So empathy. This is the magic ingredient, and you don't need to be a psychotherapist to be able to do it. And this is the last video, I promise. This one's 6 minutes long.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
What makes something better is connection. That's why talking helps. All right, now let's see if I can go the right direction on this thing. I've been doing it backwards the whole time. Wait, see? No. Okay. This I did find on Facebook, I must confess, but I think it's really important. So I will read it out loud and allow you to make your own connections about it. Robin Williams' friends. He was always happy. Everyone adored him. Kate Spade's dad. I was just talking to her an hour before, and she was planning a trip. She was just like her brand, happy, cheerful, and full of color. Anthony Bourdain's best friend. He loved his life and had this extraordinary ability to just connect with people. So let me say this really loud so the people in the back of the room can hear me. Sometimes you need to check on those who seem the strongest. And I say this to law enforcement folks, I say this to firefighter folks, and I'm saying it to you guys as well. You know, just because the person seems fine, we're so good at hiding stuff. So be careful about that, and do keep watch on your friends as well. There are great apps out there for stress management. This HeartMath one, I got a sensor, and there's an app for your phone, and you can literally breathe with it, and it's really wonderful. It helps a lot. And when you're getting out of your zone, it has this really calming voice that says, think positive thoughts. And I'm like, okay. So it's your own coach in your pocket. It's pretty good. But that's not the only brand that's out there. So we're about to wrap up. I do want to kind of summarize this for you, that the previous slides are about coping with stress in the moment, all these little things that you can do to get by in a hard day. And they're great. But they're not going to change the big picture. If there's something really wrong, a little bit of mindfulness is pretty good, but if you're dealing with something huge, it's not going to be enough. It'll be just a little bit of a Band-Aid. So you need to ask yourself some big questions. Are you happy? Are you working toward goals you care about? Do you have healthy relationships? And what is the purpose in your life? And of course, if you can't change anything, you can change your attitude, which is what we're working on. So this is another summary slide, and pictures are worth a lot more than words. So if you remember nothing else, go take a walk. Go look at the flowers. And remember when you were a kid how fun it was to pick up snails? Little things like that will just take you out of the moment of whatever is stressing you out. You all have employee assistance programs. That much I know because I have a friend who does airline employee assistance programs. So do know that there is resources out there for you, professionally related. You can talk to your doctor, your spiritual community, your local counseling center, just your friend. Go walk your dog. There are lots of things for you to do. So please don't languish on your own. And with that, I am pretty much done. When combined, the self-care practices mentioned here can help prevent burnout and improve resilience. Once you begin to routinely practice these healthy habits, they become part of your overall prevention plan. Not only do healthy habits strengthen your ability to cope while in the moment, they can help your body remember how to bounce back to a healthier state. Remember, prevention is part of a good preparedness plan. And that is all. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Coomer. That made me feel better. So we're going to open up the mic for questions. Does anybody have a question for Dr. Coomer? Anybody? Okay.
So I actually think that maybe you should give a little more thought to which side of the chart of stress relief enjoying a good cocktail at the end of the day is.
Depends on how many cocktails.
No, a cocktail, because remember, it's not just the drink. It's the sharing, the experience, the olive, the glass, the whole thing. This doesn't mean you should drink a half a gallon of vodka a night. I don't think. But actually, it's a terrific way to unwind after a tough day at the office. And again, I'm not saying that you should have 4 or 5, but it's something to think about. The only other comment I would make is that in one of the slides talked about a negative of arguing with your family. So actually, if you're Sicilian, you're arguing with your family all the time. Thanks.
Humor is a great stress reliever, so thank you so much for that one.
Good afternoon. I'm Graham from San Jose Mineta International Airport. Since you deal with fire and PD often regarding possible incidents or stress within their lives, oftentimes with airport operations, we're pretty much first responders on responding to an incident. And sometimes it could be quite stressful and or it can kind of take a toll on your mental state. So what would you, how do you work with the fire and PD officers that, how do you try to have them cope with a particular incident that may have been either stressful or that could have, I don't know, kind of negatively affected their mental state?
Oh, for sure. And again, without going into too much detail, I was called out to the crime scene after the Borderline shooting. So I was there after. I didn't go inside or see anything. But then when the fire guys at least were done responding, I met them back at the station, and we sat in a group, and I offered to speak to them. Because again, I am also working on culture change and getting to know folks. And some folks won't open up if there's somebody in particular at the table. So I'm getting to know their leadership, and let's just say putting my services out there. If people want to talk about it in a group, we do. And then some folks will just get my card slipped to them, and we'll make a private appointment or something like that. But the short answer to that is I'm getting integrated into daily operations, so that when something happens, it's not a brand new face that someone's going to say, well, I don't know you. I'm not going to open up to you. What do you know about my job? I'm going on ride-alongs. I'm heading out to crime scenes. I'm doing things like that, so that they're pretty much actually integrating mental wellness into incidents from the beginning to end. So in the beginning, we're calling it stress preparedness. In the middle, we're calling it stress management. And in the end, we're calling it debriefing. So that's how we're managing the larger episodes.
So I have a question. If you're dealing with some kind of work-related stress, do you recommend talking to a coworker or taking that home to your family, or neither?
It depends on what the stress is, and it depends on who the coworker is. Because, again, being realistic, there's some people, and work is work. There's some people you can trust, and some people who don't have your best interests in mind. So if it's somebody that you feel can hold confidences, go for it. If your family is somebody who can handle what you're telling them, because that's one thing I do hear a lot with the first responders. Their families don't want to hear what they saw that day. People can get really traumatized by hearing that kind of stuff. So who you talk to is very, very important. It's got to be someone who can empathize, kind of like what the videos showed. Someone who can make you feel not alone. Because if you open up to somebody who shuts you down, well, that's just going to be counterproductive. So I think the answer is go to someone who's safe to talk to.
Scott Brownlee from the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, but in a former life was the director at the Montrose Airport, and in response to the question on how do you deal with that in the workplace, we had a Challenger crash a number of years ago. 3 survived, 3 did not, and I made it mandatory for all my first responders to attend counseling. I brought in the Employee Assistance Program, and anybody that was on scene was required to go and meet at least once. They could go more than that, but it was mandatory.
Thank you for that. There's some folks are mandated, and then other departments feel uncomfortable with that. So, but I like the mandated. You don't have to participate, but you have to meet me that kind of works.
Peter Van Peltier, in a former life, was an airport manager. I'm a consultant now, but I remember a particularly nasty incident that we had at Aspen when I was manager there. And we lost 18 people in a Gulfstream crash. And we, too, were part of that mandatory debrief session. They waited a couple days so people could get over their nerves and their edges. But it was interesting because they called in people that I wouldn't even thought of. They brought in the dispatchers because of all the stress that they were suffering, having to listen to this and have no idea what was going on. Of course, all the sheriff's officers, all the firefighters, both rural firefighters and the guys from the airport. So it was a large, large group. And I thought to myself, well, this isn't going to work well. But all it took was one person to start sharing. And then as that trust was built, it just became a very, very good session. I was surprised at the hardened EMTs there, because I was an EMT when I went into this thing. And we really got into some of the straw that breaks the camel's back situations. A lot of these guys had seen a lot, but this was just too much combined for them at this point. Anyway, I wouldn't want to relive it, but it was an invaluable experience.
Thank you for sharing that. That's exactly how it's supposed to work.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
So you mentioned that one way to be proactive is to get into flow, and I've been hearing that a lot, on podcasts and other, professional development. But how do you actually get into flow, and what are the steps that you can take to make sure that you can stay there and maintain that?
It helps if you're not interrupted. So get into a place where you're probably not going to be interrupted. And honestly, the best thing you can do is, besides not interrupted, is just start. Because the more you hem and haw about, is this a flow activity or isn't it, you're not in flow. But then once you begin, depending on what the activity is, at least for me and my violin or even cleaning my desk, once I start doing it, I forget about absolutely everything else. So it's pretty much not thinking and just doing.
Well, everybody, please a round of applause for Dr. Comer, and we appreciate you coming here. Thank you. Brett has some announcements to make. Brett?
All right, thank you. We're going to be going to a break with exhibitors, and this will last until about 3:30. Gladys will be doing lots of raffles over there, so make sure you go and visit the exhibitors and put your business card in so you can win some of the door prizes. And just like to mention that this last session was sponsored by Wood Rogers, Aurora, and ADK Executive Search. So we'll see you back here at 3:30.